It was embarrassing, and it was shameful, and it was an event that should not have happened.
Bonjour. Hello. I'm here to comment briefly, unfortunately, on the PBO's latest report on carbon pricing. And for your benefit, I would like to read you the first paragraph of the report. Considering only the fiscal impact of the federal fuel charge, PBO estimates that average household in each of the backstop provinces in 2030-2031 will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada carbon rebate than the total amount they pay in federal fuel charge. That's what the PBO report says.
Oh, yeah. Just got told I only have about a minute left. So just very quickly, do you still stand by your conclusion that the majority of Canadians are worse off with the carbon tax when you factor in all those economic costs, lost wages, lost investment opportunities, those types of impacts?
As a result of the fuel charge and the carbon pricing regime at large, so it's including the output-based pricing system.
Okay. Well, one more quick question. Sometimes the Liberals criticize your reports because they say you haven't factored in the cost of climate change. But my understanding is that is because with or without the carbon tax, Canada will experience consequences from climate change. Is that correct? In other words, that the carbon tax doesn't magically wave away the impacts that Canada, it doesn't create a bubble around Canada at all. So can you just confirm that under both scenarios, with or without a carbon tax, the cost of climate change would still be felt by Canadians?
I'm not a climate scientist, but based on the scientific consensus, it needs concerted global action for climate change to stop getting worse. So Canada acting alone is not sufficient. So yes, that's as much of a confirmation as I can give.
So even with the carbon tax, Canadians will continue to pay the cost of climate change?
Unless everybody else reduces their emissions significantly.
Thank you very much.
So now's the time to clear the air on Pierre Poilievre's big lie to Canadian. He's been misleading Canadian. The PBO is very clear. More Canadians get money back from the Canada carbon rebate than what they pay.
Oh, yeah. We'll start with Mrs. Cusi for 6 minutes, please.
Yes, Mr. PBO, always wonderful to see you here. Very much appreciate it. And we're surprised at your appearance here today, considering the way you've been gagged. As you can see, we've brought in the best from my caucus here in an effort to question our House Leader, Mr. Scheer, as well as our finance critic, Mr. Jazraj Halan, as well as Mr. Lawrence. So with that, Mr. McCauley, I'll pass the time over to Mr. Lawrence. Thank you very much.
I'm not here to play games. I'm just going to say this like it is. So if you just take the fiscal impact, it's 8 out of 10 Canadians are better, and they can quote me and they can put that on there. But the reality is, the truth of that is that once you include the economic impact, 6 out of 10 Canadians are worse off. Is that not correct, Mr. Drew?
When we include the economic impact of the fuel charge and the output-based pricing system, it's true that the majority of households are worse off, and we are in the process of updating our analysis to try to isolate the fuel charge, the impact of the fuel charge itself.
Yeah, so when economic and fiscal impacts are combined, as you said, the majority of Canadians are worse off. That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Drew. And one last thing on the carbon tax, and then I promise I'll move forward. But the government's own report appears to validate your conclusion. Is that correct?
That is our understanding, because they arrived at an estimate of a negative 0.9%, rounded to 1% of GDP when including the fuel charge and the output-based pricing system, where we had 1.3% in 2030. So that's in the ballpark, and that's very close for that type of analysis.
Yeah, and my apologies. I'm just reminded by my colleague that I need to get you actually on the record, even though I got a nod. So I'm just going to repeat my previous question. As you said in page 4 of your report, when you include both fiscal and economic impacts of the carbon tax, of the fuel charge, the majority of Canadians are worse off.
Our report also included the output-based pricing system, so it's not just the fuel charge, it's the fuel charge and the output-based pricing system. And considering the economic impacts and the fiscal impacts of both measures, yes, the majority of households are worse off.
Thank you very much for that. How much
More, and we are doing more.
What we can conclude is that when you factor in carbon tax scam 1 and 2, the overall analysis is that a majority of households in Canada will be worse off, correct?
Unfortunately, we haven't prepared that analysis. We've only looked at the separate impacts of the carbon pricing and the clean fuel regulations.
Fair
We haven't
enough, but
combined
if the
those.
conclusion for carbon tax 1 is a majority of Canadians will be worse off, does that not mean that if there's a negative impact with carbon tax 2, that it would lean towards a negative impact overall? Would that be correct?
It's likely correct. However, the
And
precise
this applies
impact,
to every province, correct? Carbon tax 2 without a rebate,
the clean
including
fuel
Quebec
regulations,
and
yes,
BC?
that's correct.
That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that there can be some interactions with the provincial regulatory standards as well, so it may not be.
But the overall
fully-
impact would be negative. Can I just get a clear answer on that?
Sorry, I don't recall. I believe in our report we showed what the
Mr. Giroux, you said yes. I just wanted to confirm that overall.
It's very likely, yes.
It's very likely yes. Thank you very much. How much time do I have left?
To fight climate change. Just yesterday, we announced new measures on taxonomy and disclosure. And next Tuesday, Canadians will receive the next quarterly payment of the Canada Carbon Rebate. And 8 out of 10 Canadian households where the federal system is applied will receive more money than what they pay. And what Pierre Poilievre is doing is putting tens of billions of dollars of annual investment at risk with his campaign, which is based on a lie. And it's time for him to come clean and apologize to Canadians for having misled them for so long.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Continue on with the conversation my last colleague had about the carbon tax scam. When the report was released, it was admitted that about $25 billion is what the hit to the economy would be because of this carbon tax scam. And it took Conservatives pushing on this for this report to be released by the department. Have you done an analysis, or is there an estimate on what impact this would put on Canadian, on government revenues at all?
In our March 2022 and 2023 reports, we provided estimates of the potential budgetary impact related to carbon pricing. And essentially,
Does that include this $25 billion hit to the economy?
it would include our estimate of the impact on real GDP. So our estimate at that time, I don't have the dollar figure, but it was 1.3% in terms of the reduction in real GDP. That's compared to the 0.9% reduction.
And what does that mean? Does that mean it's because businesses would invest less in their own businesses and workers would have less?
It's essentially, that reflects the economic impact of the distortionary tax of related, or the distortion created from carbon pricing. So
Okay.
Households having to
less.
shift.
I just have one quick last question. I just wanted to confirm one more time that given even this report, given all the information we have today, including whatever error, which I think was corrected by you rightfully, Mr. Giroux, that at the end of the day, that a majority of households will be worse off when you factor in the economic and fiscal impacts of the carbon tax scam.
We know it's true if you factor the fuel charge and the output-based pricing system. We are in the process of updating our analysis to isolate the impact of the fuel charge.
But that conclusion will not change, in your opinion.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The PBO report also says that the industrial price on pollution is not only less costly, but it also reduces emissions by significantly more than the consumer price. Is there a way, why can't you, get rid of the consumer price and just strengthen the industrial price to make up for those emissions at a much lesser cost?
Our plan has more than 100 measures, and no single measure will enable us to achieve our 2030 targets. We need everything. And the consumer portion of carbon pricing is very important. It's going to provide at least 13 million tons. That's the equivalent of removing from our road 26 million vehicles by 2030. It's an important component. Yes, the industrial system gives us more emission reduction, but we need everything to get...
Less costly, so why not make up those emissions by strengthening the industrial one?
We are doing that. We've strengthened the industrial pricing system a little over a year ago. We're looking at what we could do furthermore going into the future. But if I start removing measures, then you'll be the first one to tell me, well, Minister, you're going further away from your targets. That simply doesn't work. David?
Can I just ask you, the overall conclusion from the PBO, from his briefing, from his report, is that, yeah, we made an error, but largely the conclusion was the same. When you look at the economic costs, when you look at the household costs, you're paying more. So essentially they were right. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that this was not a really big mistake?
That's not what this report says. And the report also says that he acknowledges that he does not take into account the economic benefits that are resulting from carbon pricing in Canada and those benefits to households, that he doesn't take into account the economic impacts to households of climate change and natural catastrophes going up in this country. And hopefully in future reports he will be able to do that. But I think the first paragraph of this report is very clear. More Canadians get more money back than what they pay for carbon pricing.
Before he understands you can't have a plan for the economy unless you have a plan for the environment.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He doesn't have a plan for either, as evidenced by the fact that he came completely unglued and started spitting out personal insults and crying, liar, 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 on a radio station the other day when he learned that I had pointed to his own government report, which showed that his carbon tax will blow a $25 to $30 billion hole in our GDP. This was from a report that his government tabled in the House of Commons. If, in fact, his government is lying about the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy, then what is the true cost?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer demonstrated that 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better with the Canada carbon rebate every 3 months than the cost of the price on pollution. And on top of that, Canadians know the price on pollution has brought down our emissions faster than any other G7 country at the same time as it is supporting Canadians in the middle class and working hard to join it. We're going to continue to fight climate change and invest in a strong economy for the future, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to deny climate change and cut programs and services that Canadians rely on. That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you can't sit in the big chair if you can't read your own government documents. The Environment and Climate Change Canada carbon pollution pricing data tabled in this House by his government said that it will cost between $25 and $30 billion in lost GDP when this tax is implemented. A further document tabled by his Environment Minister on Carbon Tax 2 says there will be another $9 billion hole for a total of between $34 and $40 billion. Now he screams that this is all lies. Again, if his government documents are lying, what is the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy?
Sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules.
Still think that it would be helpful for Canadians to know exactly what you would do when it comes to tariffs. So why are you being so reticent to talk about that?
Because I'm a good negotiator. I have negotiated a number of situations in the past. I know how to manage crisis.
Did you get anything in exchange for?
We have. To be clear, it's part of a bigger negotiation. It's something that We expected, in the broader sense, that would be part of a final deal. We're making progress towards a final deal. There's more to be done, to be clear.
They say that you're the Trump whisperer.
Have you asked the president to stop calling Canada the 51st state?
Yes.
Specifically, what did you ask him?
Exactly what you just said.
I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.